So you guys in the chat, you've already shouted out some of the players that were late around gems. Some of you guys shouted out Josh Farmer. Some of you guys shouted out Deion Walker from Kentucky. We got some shout outs for Junior Tafuna, the defensive lineman from Utah. Who's your first gem, or just outside of the top 10 interior defensive linemen that you wanted to talk about here on the show?
All right, let's get another pass rusher going first, and among the most productive, arguably the most productive interior pass rusher over the last couple of years, that's Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. He was really good at Duke, transferred to Virginia Tech this year, just kept getting better. Over the last 2 years, Trevor, the best interior pass rush grade in the country, the third best pass rush win rate, the 12th best pressure rate. Aeneas Peebles is just one of those guys. Is he the most explosive athlete like the guys at the top of this list? No, but he knows darn well what he's doing. You've mentioned before his ability to attack one half of an offensive lineman, the hand usage, adds in a little spin move every once in a while. I think Peebles as a mid-round pass rusher, if you get him in late round 3 or even in round 4 as a guy, again, Maybe you have to DPR him. You have to go with a designated pass rusher role for him early on. But I think this is somebody who teams need to be looking at, even if just for his pass rush technique and the production that he's given really his entire career across Duke and Virginia Tech. He's been a dominant player for really all of his career as a pass rusher. Good enough in run defense. I think Virginia Tech, they also kind of emphasize the pass rush and getting after it with 4 rushers. But I think Peebles is somebody certainly to take a chance on, again, to add to the depth of your pass rush, and a guy who could give you very good reps in there with his hand usage and his technique.
Yeah, dude certainly knows how to rush the passer when it comes to the why and the how of the pass rushing plans that you really come up with. He's 9th percentile in height. He's 13th percentile in weight. He's 8th percentile in length. So the measurables are not going to do him any favors when it comes to draft weekend. I think he's going to be a day 3 pick because of it, but I would take this guy in the 4th round because of how well he gets after the passer. You know, you saw the grades there. He understands how to win. Very high pass rush win percentage, very high pass rush grades. And just like we sort of talked about with Omar Norman Lott, you're going to take a chance on those kinds of guys, right? You're going to give them a chance to be difference makers on your roster, even if you designate them as just simply pass rushers that you have in maybe a deeper defensive line rotation. So I think that's a good shout out. I'm shouting out CJ West. This is where we're getting CJ West into the show, the redshirt senior from Indiana. Now, this guy's a little bit shorter as well, 6'1". That's 9th percentile, just like it is for Aeneas Peebles, but CJ West got a little bit more mass on him. He's 317. That's 79th percentile. So where the length, the height is a detractor on his scouting report, certainly the weight is exactly what it needs to be. This is somebody who is a nose tackle type of a dude who I think has a pretty well-rounded profile to him. Really high energy player, gives maximum effort at all times. Good first step explosive, which we saw that at the combine too, whether it was the 40-yard dash, the explosive jumps. I mean, this guy can really get off the ball pretty well. He also can hold up very well against double teams. He is somebody who, in my opinion, you feel very comfortable with, anywhere from a 3 technique to a 0 technique defensive tackle, a true interior defensive lineman, a defensive tackle type of a player. I feel like he could play a little bit more violence consistently. He plays with good effort, but just that violence with him. The length, I think, is sort of an issue when it comes to the overall output that he will have as a pass rusher at the NFL level. But for what he can bring to the table as a very solid run defender, high effort player, and even the splashes that we saw from him as a pass rusher, even the past 2 seasons combined, 10.4 pass rush win percentage, that's 76th percentile there, along with some really good run defense grades. As long as you're okay with the fact that, hey, he's just not built the way that a lot of interior defensive linemen are at the NFL level, especially when it comes to length, you got to love the tape. And I think that that's what matters most for CJ West, and I think he's going to be a really good pro. I don't know if he'll sneak into the 3rd round. I think he should sneak into the 3rd round. He should be a day 2 selection. Maybe the NFL thinks he's a priority day 3 type of a guy, but in my opinion, I'd be taking this guy day 3, and I'd be pretty happy with it.
I have a stat and a thought on CJ West.
Okay.
First of all, this year, the 3rd lowest percentage of negative grades in run defense in all of college football. I believe the 2 guys ahead of him were Mason Graham and Walter Nolan. And the other thing, I think about undersized guy, not a ton of height, not a ton of length, but really good in run defense, makes the guys around him better. And, you mentioned the Chargers before. And if they don't go defensive tackle early, another guy with that exact same description is Poona Ford. And I think you have a guy
100%.
maybe who you don't have as, you're not going to take West in the 1st round, but if you're going to directly replace Poona Ford with a similar player as opposed to somebody like Kenneth Grant, CJ West is pretty much it. And again, not a guy who's going to give you a ton of pass rush. Even Ford last year good pass rush grades, 25 pressures and 3 sacks, I believe. West would probably give you about that for a full season, but he's a guy, I was talking to somebody about this a few weeks ago, or even maybe it was in preparation for when they played Notre Dame, and Indiana was one of the best teams at fitting the run as a team, but the biggest key to that was West's ability to hold his gap and take on double teams and free up everybody else. He's another guy like Ford did for the Chargers last year, makes everybody else's life easier. I think that's actually not a bad comp for it. So I think he would be somebody that Jim Harbaugh thinks about if he doesn't go D tackle earlier.
We got some other shout outs in the chat. Cam Horsley from Boston College, another run stuffer. I think that he could be, they're saying in the chat, he could be a late round steal here. Vernon Broughton, the other Texas defensive tackle. I actually just watched Vernon Broughton for his full scouting report. Let me find him. I could read this one to you guys.
He's a fun one.
He wasn't one of your choices, was he?
No. I have 2 others, but I know Max is somebody too that likes Broughton a lot. And you talk about the compliment that he played to Alfred Collins as the pass rusher. Between the 2 of them, Broughton's a fun player. He is. Yeah,
so I actually categorize Broughton as a 3-4 defensive end because 6'5", 89th percentile, 310, 65th percentile, 35-inch arms, 94th percentile. So length is just a huge benefit to like what he does and how he approaches defensive line play. He's got pretty solid numbers, but a lot like Alfred Collins, he just didn't have the opportunity to be a starter up until this past season. So length is the big plus for him. I don't know. So here's my bottom line scouting report for him, which you guys can see in the draft guide. You can see all this kind of stuff, and you can see it on the PFF big board actually. Broughton's hand placement needs more technique and needs more discipline to be an effective one-on-one winner in the league. Even in his current state, his length and strength give him good versatility as a 2-gapping defensive lineman with a preferred home as a 3-4 defensive end. I kind of see him and Collins pretty similar. Like, I feel like these are guys that should be like 3rd-round pick type of players, really versatile on your defensive line. I don't know how much of pass rush juice you're really going to get out of them at the NFL level, but you're going to feel good about them being on your roster and then being able to do a lot of different things for you. So that's my thoughts on Vernon Broughton. But okay, who else do you have? Who else do you want to bring to the table?
All right, so my next one, I got a couple of fun stats for the next one. Trev, you know I found out the only defensive tackle in the country with at least an 80 run defense grade in each of the last 3 seasons is Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. 2 of those, the first 2 years of those 3 were at Houston. This one was at Oregon, and you just see a consistently excellent run defender, even for a guy his size. His ability to play multiple roles along a defensive line, particularly at Houston, where they used him all over the place. Even there's reps off the edge at Houston, and he's not again another guy. I think if you're looking for run-stopping defensive tackles, this is your draft, right? Pay attention, Cincinnati Bengals or teams, Dallas Cowboys, teams like that, right? But I think Caldwell, a little bit shorter, but look, he's a better athlete than he's given credit for at his weight. And I think something that was interesting to me, you're going to think about him obviously as a nose tackle, right? But his 2 years at Houston, he hardly did that at all. They were moving him all over the place. This year, for the season, an 81.2 run defense grade, but when he was lined up this year as a nose tackle, 167 snaps, an 87.3 run defense grade. As the complement to Derek Harmon as the athletic 3 technique, Jamari Caldwell was excellent in the role that he played. Again, freeing up linebackers, freeing up Derek Harmon to penetrate gaps and do what he does. I think he's another one, much like you just talked about with CJ West. You can plug him in the A-gaps. He's going to be really solid for you. He's going to be a brick wall in there, and I think the athleticism even with him is a little bit underrated. Caldwell's another one, going to be a really good run defender in the league.
Yeah, we got some love for him in the chat as well as one of these gems that we were going to bring up. And so he's somebody that I know my co-host, the NFL Stock Exchange show, Connor Rogers, really loves him as well. So he could bring a lot. I think he's got a handful of really good plays. He really does. He's got that quick feet for a nose tag, a lot like Kenneth Grant. He's sort of like Kenneth Grant light in this class. Like if you gravitate towards that quick feet, the quick lower body mechanics that you have as a nose tackle type, Jamari Caldwell is probably the next guy that you're going to love because he brings the ability to do a lot of that stuff too. He's got some good pursuit speed as well when he's coming from the backside and he's trying to go get ball carries before they reach the line of scrimmage. So he is a good shout out, and I'm glad you gave him a shout out here as a potential late round gem because I do think that he's going to be a day 3 selection, but somebody that could definitely play a big time role for these teams. Riley Mills from Notre Dame is the next guy that I want to talk about here. Now, some people might say, well, hold on, is he an edge? I classify him as a 3-4 defensive end. That is an interior defensive line position for me. And so this is another dude who brings a lot of really good length to the position. I feel like over the last couple of seasons, 6'5", 295 pounds, so he's a little bit lighter. He's built closer to what you would expect from that 3-4 defensive end. I don't know how much of a prolific pass rusher this guy's going to be, although he had a handful of really nice reps when he was given those one-on-one opportunities, especially with those long arms. But he plays naturally high. He's got to be more balanced, and he's got to be able to hold the point of attack a little bit more. He's just a little bit lighter for an interior player. That's why I think he's more of that 3-4 defensive end or 4-3 defensive end. Maybe kick him out even a little bit further and try to have him play on the edge. Reminds me a little bit of Logan Hall. Now, Logan Hall went in the first round of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Should not have. I mean, he shouldn't have on draft night, and then it didn't play out to have that kind of value now getting towards the end of his rookie contract. But he sort of reminds me of that sort of a player, anywhere from a 4-eye to a 5 technique type of a defensive end, whether you want to call it a 3-4 interior alignment or more of an edge alignment to him. But I think he's got good strength, and he just brings a lot of versatility to sort of that defensive end position, whether you want it to be more on the interior or on the edge. So he's somebody that I think can bring a lot of versatility to a defensive line. So I got Riley Mills from Notre Dame.
Agreed, the versatility. And when I've watched Notre Dame the last couple of years, I've always thought of him on their D-line as kind of that lunch pail guy, right? Just a guy who can come in and work hard and fill any role that he needs to give them, right? So I do think he can be a part of a defensive line rotation. You mentioned it. Got to be stronger in run defense, so if you're going to do that, right? He's obviously a better pass rusher than he is a run defender, but I think a guy his size in the role that he could play got to hold up at the point of attack a little bit better. I do like Riley Mills. We'll see how he comes back off the injury that he had at the end of this past season too, but he's a guy who can work his way into an NFL defensive line rotation for sure.
Last gem that you're bringing to the table.
The most I had to save the best one for last. I just love talking about this guy. Trevor, if you thought we were getting through this whole show without me mentioning JJ Pegues, you were wrong. Absolutely. I just love running through the numbers of it, all right? So this year, 74.6 grade on defense, 81.8 run defense grade, 31 pressures, 4 sacks. That's fantastic. 92.3 grade on offense because he had 7 rushing touchdowns and 9 forced missed tackles on, I believe it was 21 carries. He's just fun. I mean, obviously, he's a really good run defender. He's a way better athlete than you'd give him credit for, I believe, at 325 pounds. Started to develop the pass rush game a little bit, and then just the fun part that he gives you on offense is he was a Wildcat quarterback at Ole Miss, right? This guy is just somebody who reminds me, Max thinks about, he was telling me, he's like, oh, I might as well just comp him to Scott Matlock now, right? Or I think about a guy like Colin Saunders, who's done a similar fullback / D tackle role for the Saints as well. I like Pegues. I like that he plays any role that Lane Kiffin would tell him to, offense or defense down at Ole Miss. And I think he was really getting better this year next to Walter Nolan as a run defender especially. I think he's a big body who can play inside on early downs. And if you do want to use him in those offensive packages, a Wildcat package or a jumbo package, things like that, he's more than capable of doing it. He proved it this year. I mean, there's not any other defensive tackles in the draft that had 7 rushing touchdowns this year and a receiving touchdown a couple of years ago. So I just like Pegues. He's a guy probably somewhere around round 4 or 5 that I would want to have him on my football team, if that makes sense.
No, he's absolutely getting drafted because some team is going to see him and see just this ball of clay that they can do so much with him, whether it's fullback, whether it's tight end, whether it's him playing on the end, defensive tackle, whatever, man. I mean, Wildcat running back at some point is what we've seen from him in his college career. So when you have players that have that size and yet are that uniquely gifted as balanced natural athletes, they're absolutely getting drafted. So I think he's going to be a priority day 3 pick. I agree. So I will make our content director, Gordon, happy with this one because he shouted this name out in all caps when we began this segment of the show. My last guy is Tonka Hemingway, the defensive lineman from South Carolina. Now, I think he is a little bit more of a tweener type. I would categorize him as that 3-4 defensive end. Once again, somebody who's comfortable playing in a 4-eye technique or maybe head up over the offensive tackle. But 6'3", 284 pounds. He's got those 33.5-inch arms, but a athleticism score of 85 according to NFL.com when you go over to their combine. 32-inch vertical, 9'4" broad jump, 7.36 3-cone, 4.48 20-yard shuttle. I mean, these are really good scores for a defensive lineman, and Tonka Hemingway is the forgotten man on South Carolina's defensive line. TJ Sanders got a lot of the pub on the interior. You had Kyle Kennard, who was Defensive Player of the Year, Edge Rusher of the Year. Can't remember exactly which award it was that he won, but had a really productive season this year. Dylan Stewart looked like the best freshman pass rusher we've seen in a long, long time. And Tonka Hemingway just kind of got forgotten about. And as you see on the screen there, he's played more than 500 snaps in each of the last 3 seasons. He has been a constant on South Carolina's defensive line and throughout his college career. So was able to play a lot more this past season in a full-time starter role. You see the grades. They're not going to just jump out at you, but players who have this kind of experience, this kind of length, this kind of versatility to you, tweener can sometimes be a negative as much as a positive, but when you have that kind of athleticism that he showcased at the combine, those are the tweener types of players that you actually want to bet on and believe in. So Tonka Hemingway, in my opinion, somewhere around the 5th round, 4th round, something like that. I feel like that's a comfortable range for him to get drafted in. And just because of how well he played and held his own on the best defensive line in the country, in my opinion, should not go unnoticed when we talk about his pro projection. So I got Tonka Hemingway as the last guy.
I think you mentioned it. This year shouldn't go unnoticed, and they had a stacked unit, but I want to point out that he was far and away their best pass rusher the prior 2 years before they had broken out as a unit, right? He was really, in 2022 and 2023, the only threat of a pass rush up there. So I think for him to kind of get that recognition alongside, we talk about TJ Sanders and Kyle Kennard, and eventually we're going to talk about Dylan Stewart and some other guys in that defense, or even we've got guys in the secondary and a linebacker too. It was a true 3-layer defense this year, but he was producing even when South Carolina was not a good football team at all the prior 2 years. So Hemingway he deserves a lot of credit for sticking around, for battling through, and being really the most consistent pass rusher, not this year, but over the past 3 years. Yeah,
and obviously an elite name, right? Which is important.
Absolutely. That's a defensive tackle name. He couldn't play any other position. No way.
Tonka Hemingway.
Perfect.
Just unbelievable. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.